The NFL draft is less than 2 weeks away, so I thought it was the perfect opportunity to put together a mock draft. I've been watching a lot of tape, I've been watching a lot of mock drafts and reading a lot about these players. I'm not the biggest college football fan, but I know NFL football and I know team needs, so I'm playing a little bit of matchmaker and we're gonna go through the top 10. So sit back, relax, and let's get into it. Number 1 is the Chicago Bears, and it is no secret what they're gonna do. They're going Caleb Williams. This guy has been the number 1 choice for 2 years in my mind. I think everybody knows that he's going first. He's a great player. Everybody's been talking about how great he is. They're trying to poke holes in his game. But at the end of the day, he's going to go number 1 to Chicago. And I think that they're ready for him. They've been building this offseason for him. They got Keenan Allen. They got DeAndre Swift. They got Gerald Everett. They've upgraded that offensive line a little bit. I think they're building all these pieces to make sure that Caleb Williams has exactly what he needs to be successful in Chicago in a division that is very competitive right now. The Lions are playing well. The Packers were way better than I thought anybody imagined they would be last year. At the end of the day, the Bears need to compete. They've been looking for a quarterback to be their number 1 guy for decades now, and they've swung and missed so many times. So this is the pick. They have to make it, and they've been building towards this pick. So let's look at Caleb Williams' game a little bit. Overall, he's a baller. I think everybody knows that. He's had over 3,500 yards the last 2 seasons. Last year was seen as kind of a letdown year, but he still threw for over 3,500 yards, 30 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. I mean, if that's a letdown year, we'll take it. As you can see from these stats, deep passes, he had 15 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. So he likes to drive the ball deep. He's very accurate deep, and he's a guy that will be able to stretch the field for the Chicago Bears. But there are some risks, and one thing is he's not necessarily a running quarterback, but he scores a lot of touchdowns running the ball, running in the red zone. Last season, he had 11 touchdowns on the ground. The season before, he had 5. Yardage-wise, nothing to be super excited about. But the number that really frightens me here are the fumbles. In 2022, he had 5, but in 2023, he had 16 fumbles. And that's in sunny Southern California. We're not talking about the windy city, Chicago, with the rain, the sleet, the wind, the everything about Chicago that makes it a much tougher place to play than USC. I don't know if it means his hands are small or he's just not gripping the ball right, or he's just being a little too reckless with the ball, which we've seen with like Lamar Jackson, for example. He's a great player, but he can get reckless with the ball. Same thing here. So it'll be interesting to see, but something that they'll have to coach out of him because he can't be having 16 fumbles every season. You just can't do that. Now with the number 2 pick, Washington Commanders, I think it's going to be Jayden Daniels. The reason why, he's just explosive. He can run, he can throw. He's a kind of a unicorn type player that can really drive the ball down the field and get guys open, but do it with his legs as well. Also, they just came off having Sam Howell, quarterback Sam Howell, UNC quarterback Drake May. Do you really want to get another UNC quarterback? I would stick here and go Jayden Daniels. He's explosive. He's a fun player to watch. And as you can see here, he's a great long ball thrower. Jayden Daniels, 3,800 yards, 40 touchdowns, 4 interceptions with 22 touchdowns in that 20-plus category. So he's driving the ball downfield, similar to Caleb Williams. Look how many seasons he played at college football. That's kind of the biggest concern, is he played 5 years of college football. So he was a man among boys literally, because he was much older than most players out there. The biggest concern becomes, okay, he really didn't pop off until his last season. All those other years were decent, but not nearly as explosive as that last year. So was it just age, or was he a late bloomer? There's a lot to be desired there, but I think he was so good last season. You hope that just carries over and he becomes a dominant NFL player. But of course, he can also run the ball, and that's one of his biggest strengths. Last season, he had over 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns. That means he accounted for 40 passing touchdowns and 10 rushing touchdowns while only having 3 fumbles. All right, Washington is happy. We go to number 3 and the New England Patriots. If you're the Patriots, you need an explosive quarterback. You need a guy that can bring some life to that team, because ever since they lost Tom Brady, they tried to replace him with Mac Jones. That didn't work. You had Cam Newton for a while. That didn't work. So I think the perfect quarterback for them is Drake May. He can run. He can throw. He's an explosive player. A lot of people think he'll go number 2. He just feels like a Patriots quarterback and a guy that they can get behind for years to come. Last year was seen as kind of a drop-off, but he still had 3,600 yards and 24 touchdowns. And then that year before, he really balled out. Now they need to just start getting him some talent and some weapons maybe later in this draft because it's such a strong quarterback and receiver and offensive line. He can also run the ball. 9 touchdowns last year, over 500 yards. You get the quarterback first, then you get the receiver later on, maybe in the second round or trade up into the end of the first, and you start building around somebody because right now, Patriots, you're boring, and it's been like that for a long time. So you need to fix that and bring some life to the organization. Okay, we have Arizona at number 4. What are they gonna do? Well, trade alert. Arizona is getting rid of that pick. They're trading back. They're getting more assets because the Minnesota Vikings, with their 2 first-round picks, have been kind of projecting that this is going to happen for a long time. So they send the Arizona Cardinals pick 11, pick 23, and a 4th-round pick next year to pop up to that number 4 spot. Arizona goes back, gathers some assets, can probably draft 2 receivers if they want to really cover their bases in a very strong draft, wide receiver-wise. And what are they doing this for? Who are they picking? They're picking J.J. McCarthy. He's a winner, and this is something that you hear from draft pundits every season. Jim Harbaugh has been talking about how great he is. He's been bumping up his draft value. And if you're Minnesota, you need a guy. You need to take a risk on a guy. You need somebody. Sam Darnold is not going to be your long-term answer. So I feel good about them going with J.J. McCarthy. The last 2 seasons are pretty good for him, but his numbers aren't nearly as high as some of the other guys we saw earlier. He was on a team that really liked to run the ball as opposed to just passing it. I think it's a risky pick, but everything you hear from all the draft people is he has the intangibles. He's a guy that'll get better over time, and he just hasn't had time to skyrocket like a Jaden Daniels who's been in college football for 5 seasons. J.J. McCarthy's really only played 2 full seasons. He's gotten better each season. He's on a positive trajectory. They won the national championship, and I think it's a good pick for Minnesota, who really needs to figure out their life after Kirk Cousins. But here you can see from his rushing numbers, not much of a rusher, only 3 touchdowns, 3 fumbles. He uses it when he needs to, but in reality, compared to the other prospects we talked about earlier, not really much of a rushing threat from J.J. McCarthy. But that's okay. You just need functional athleticism. When you see Kirk Cousins out there, you don't think of a rushing quarterback there, but he can move around when he needs to, and that's all you need, really. If you're the Chargers, the LA Chargers, with that 5th pick, you're pumped, okay? You did not think you were going to get the number 1 player in the draft outside of quarterback. Everybody's hopping up. Everybody's drafting quarterback, but you have Justin Herbert. You're in a great spot. You lost all your weapons this offseason. You could trade back and get more picks, but I think you stick here and you take the best receiver in the draft, Marvin Harrison Jr. This guy has been obviously penned to be a great receiver from birth. His dad, Marvin Harrison, was one of my favorite players on the Colts back in the day, playing with Peyton Manning. Just an explosive player, and everything about Marvin Harrison Jr. says that. Jim Harbaugh, coach of Michigan last season, he had to play Ohio State a lot. He had to scheme and game plan for Marvin Harrison Jr. a lot, so he knows exactly what he's getting here. And at the end of the day, you're giving Justin Herbert a weapon he can use to try to catch Patrick Mahomes, catch the Chiefs in the AFC West, and at least make it interesting. Averaging 18 yards of reception and 14 touchdowns last season. But he's a playmaker, a showstopper, just ready to ball out. And we just know that these NFL bloodlines, when you have a dad or a brother, almost always, at least recently, that has worked out. TJ Watt fell down the draft, even though JJ Watt was a monster, and boom, he's one of the best defensive players in the league. You have the Bosa brothers. You've had a lot of different versions of this. Even Michael Pittman Jr. There's a lot of things that point to him being great. And Marvin Harrison was one of the greatest receivers of all time. His son shares more than just his name, and that is an exciting prospect for the Chargers. All right. Chargers are pumped. We got to go to number 6. I think the Giants are pumped as well. They have not had an explosive wide receiver, a number 1, since 2019 when Odell Beckham left. So they are going to stick, and they're going to pick Malik Nabers from LSU. A lot of people are now saying that this might be the best receiver in the draft. I don't agree with that. I still think Marvin Harrison is number 1, but Malik Nabers is making a case for himself. He is balling out, and he's part of the reason that Jaden Daniels is being talked about as top pick, because Malik Nabers is that dude, is that guy. We got to talk about Malik Nabers because this guy is a monster. Last year, over 1,500 yards, 14 touchdowns, explosive player, and this is exactly what the Giants need. They need some explosiveness. They lost Saquon Barkley. They have no receivers that are really that high end. I know they've made mistakes with Danny Dimes and signing him to that long-term deal, but at the end of the day, if they can get decent play out of him, the best way they're going to do that is through a top flight receiver. And they have at least one more year of Danny Dimes. They can play him this year and they can cut him after next year. I believe the cap hit is over $60 million if they cut him this year. Not going to happen. After next season, $22 million or so. Now that's possible. This is kind of a make or break season for Daniel Jones. I don't believe in him, but we have seen players take that next step when they get an elite receiver on their team. We saw Josh Allen do it when he got Stephon Diggs. All of a sudden his game popped up. We can argue about Daniel Jones as much as we want. I'm not even defending the guy, but I will say that give him a chance and give him a number one guy. Malik Nabers, I think, is a perfect fit for that system and will bring some real explosiveness to the team. Also, he's a deep ball threat. 9 of his touchdowns were deep balls over 20 yards. So he likes to go the distance, take it to the house. Even if he doesn't solve Daniel Jones, he's going to at least help him a little bit. Bring some life to the team. Otherwise, they're just kind of a sad team to watch, floating in the winds. All right. Next for the Titans, we have Joe Alt, a true blue chip, top flight offensive lineman. They've been looking to replace Taylor Lewan for over a year now, unsuccessfully. And you have Will Levis. I don't know what to think of Will Levis. He's still such a question mark, but why not give him a top flight tackle that can help protect his blind side and give him a chance to develop? Maybe you pick up a receiver in the second round because there are so many talented receivers this season. You get the top offensive lineman, hopefully a staple in your franchise for a decade, kind of like Taylor Lewan was. Bring in Joe Alt from Notre Dame, just kind of a nasty pass blocker, a nasty run blocker, an overall talented guy. I believe that if you have a player like that, you need to provide as much help as you can. You could go defense, but that's not helping your number one prospect right now, which is Will Levis, so why not protect that blind side? Okay, number 8, the Falcons have a lot, and I mean a lot of weapons now, a lot of changes this season. They could kind of stick and pick and add another weapon, but I believe that there will be a trade, and that trade will be with the Las Vegas Raiders. Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, you can't go into an NFL season in Las Vegas and be excited about that. Devontae Adams is going to, I don't even know what he's going to do because that's crazy talk. So Raiders get aggressive. They've done aggressive things before in drafts and trading up. So they'll give up their first round pick to move up 5 slots. They'll give up the 44th overall pick, their second round pick. And then they'll give up pick 143. So I love that for the Raiders. Get aggressive, move on up. And for the Falcons, they pile a few more picks. If you're the Raiders, you're not trading up for a receiver, a tight end, a tackle. So I think they're trading up for Michael Penix Jr. You want to get ahead of the Steelers and some other teams that could possibly trade up there as well. So you make Devontae Adams happier, and it gives something for Las Vegas to be excited about. At the end of the day, there hasn't been much excitement with the Raiders organization in a few years. So you bring in Michael Penix Jr., a guy with 6 years of college football experience. Let me say that again. 6 years of college football experience. He balled out over 4,500 yards 2 years ago, over 3,900 last year. He can throw the ball, he can slice it, he can dice it, and you just hope that all that experience leads to a more productive player in the NFL. Look at a Brock Purdy, 4-year starter, and then he kind of was able to ramp up much quicker than maybe some guys that don't get quite as much experience, like a Trey Lance. He had so much to learn and had so few snaps. You're not going to have that problem with Michael Penix Jr. If there's an organization that's going to fall in love with a boom or bust player, that just sounds like a Las Vegas Raider to me. All right, number 9, Bears. They could trade out. They can keep the pick. At the end of the day, I think they're going to stick and pick. They're excited, and they're going Rome Odunze because it just makes sense to me. I understand that there's so many holes on that defensive side of the ball, a bunch of holes. But at the end of the day, Rome gives you a true weapon at the wide receiver position. When you draft a top quarterback, you want to do whatever you can to make sure that he's successful. I wouldn't be mad if the Bears went all their picks, they went all offense, because you want to see that offense and you want to make sure that it's as good as possible. They could go 2-15 this season. But if Caleb Williams looks really good and the offense is humming and maybe the defense sucks, that's a win. I think you don't care how many games you win your rookie year. You're not winning the Super Bowl. The Bears are not winning the Super Bowl. You just want to see a quarterback develop And if you can get that offense humming, then you address defense next season. You bring in some free agents, you draft, maybe your next 2025 draft is all defense. I think this year you just load as much talent as you can into that offense. What I like about him is his stats are balanced. He has that deep ball threat, but he's scoring touchdowns at 20 plus yards, taking it from the middle of the field and bouncing it out. He's just an overall great receiver, and it gives somebody for Caleb Williams to come into the league together with and build with. They have great receivers. They got Keenan Allen and DJ Moore, and they're great, but they're all established. I think it's really great when you get this combo of them coming into the league together. It's kind of like a Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase situation where Joe Burrow came in 1 year before him, but still when Jamar Chase came in, they could really grow together, and they're still growing together. This is the perfect pick for the Chicago Bears. And number 10, the Jets, they stick and pick. This is the most drafted, the most mocked player I've seen on pretty much every mock draft. And it's the Jets going Brock Bowers out of Georgia, a guy that can catch, a guy that can block, that kind of all-around tight end. Now, this is interesting, and I actually think it has a lot to do with the Detroit Lions, believe it or not, because it usually takes tight ends a few years to really ramp up. I mean, in terms of Kyle Pitts, we're still waiting for him to ramp up. But last season, Sam Laporta broke the mold, and he became one of the top 5 tight ends in the league already, in my opinion. So you're hoping that Brock Bowers can do the exact same thing. The last 3 seasons, over 600 yards consistently, and you can see it over a long span of time, which is really, really good. And that's on a loaded Georgia team. So you know that he has to be great to get these kind of numbers. And then being that more intermediate to long range guy, having this security blanket for Aaron Rodgers, giving him that weapon that he needs to make sure that if he doesn't find Garrett Wilson, he's got this man right here, Brock Bowers, to really cover up. And he's had success with some tight ends in the past, some less talented tight ends than Brock Bowers, not first round guys. So bring him in, establish him. He'll help the pass protection, he'll help the run blocking, and he'll also be able to go out and get some passes. Maybe this becomes his Kelsey or his Laporta or somebody in that realm. I don't know if he's that level of player based on what I've seen from highlights and what I've read about him. They are 1 or 2 pieces away. It's a super talented roster. Why not get a guy that can help in 2 ways with the blocking and the pass catching? That's my top 10. A few trades mixed in there. I think that this is a loaded draft class, really heavily towards the quarterback and towards the receiver with some great offensive line as well. But I really went toward quarterback and receiver because that just feels like where teams are really going to think that this is the place where you can grab those blue chip talents. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you want to see which 5 players are the angriest leading up to the NFL draft based on free agency and this offseason flurry of trades and movement, check out my video right here. Peace.